the other things that appear here, pretty much they're going to work exactly the same way. So if I click on code PHP, you see it looks exactly the same down the bottom here. Got all the same options. The code itself is a little different, but you don't really need to know or need to care what the differences are. The difference that's important as far as you're concerned is the fact that this can be used where the web server you're actually tracking the web page on is a totally different box. So it might be around the other side of the world, and it will still track and happily track to your Intratrakker install. So no matter how many different domains, sites, servers that you're actually using, you can still track everything through the one install of Intratrakker, which is what it's designed for. Now the other two options, I wouldn't worry about too much if you don't understand them, but essentially the code SSI ASP, that is there for people using Windows servers, an older technology called SSI, which essentially came along before PHP. Pretty much if the server you're using requires you to use this and you're stuck with it, it's your only option, then you could use that. The last one allows you to track pretty much anything that you can access regardless of being able to access the actual base page code, and it works like Google AdSense does. It's a piece of JavaScript, hence the code JavaScript, which you just paste on, and if you, for example, wanted to track your Blogger page, your hosted web Blogger page, you could take this piece of code, paste it into the bottom of the template for your Blogger, and you'd use that without actually being able to access the web page code that runs on the server. So if you have a need to do that, then you can use the JavaScript version. But pretty much the ones I'd recommend are the code PHP local as the first port of call, because I'm assuming that when you install this on a server, it's certainly going to be, in the very beginning at least, you'll be tracking the probably a page on the same domain as you actually have installed Intratrakker on, and certainly the same server. And as you progress, you may need the other options. Okay, so going forward, having actually taken the code off here, copied it, pasted it into the actual document, into the code of the PHP file, and then uploaded that to back to the server of the site you're actually running on, you're ready to track. So that's leaving aside all the explanations I've gone through here. That is a very quick process to import the page. Click on the code PHP local, copy this code, paste it into the website. Okay, so now you've actually wanted to see what it looked like. You could use the test mode to actually see that make sure the web page still works, which is vitally important, and also see that the tracking system is actually working correctly as well. So if I now go into the next section, which is what do we do with all this information, we look at the Pages Report menu, which, as you can see, has Intratrakker, because that's what I've been working on so far, obviously, and it's notanotherdiet.com. Now, if I just pull up one of those, if you watch that heat map multiplier number, it went from 1, as you can see there, and has now become 14. Now, what's actually happened there, as you can see, is if you're paying attention down the left-hand side there, when this page first came up, it was rather a lot of red and not much else, and then after this number changed to a 14, it actually became variations of red and green. Now, what's that for? Essentially, this program originally, and in fact still is, was designed to show that where everybody had read completely a particular section of the web page, it would show bright green. Now, of course, statistically that is not highly likely. It is the ideal situation, and it's certainly what you're working towards, but certainly if your page, particularly with this example, was terrible in terms of converting and so forth, and therefore you needed a program like Intratrakker in the first place, like I did when I built it, then you're going to want to scale that so you can see easier what's going on, because the differences between red, and slightly darker red is hard to see, whereas I can very easily see the pale green, the bright green there to bright red at this point here. See that this is not very good, and this is obviously a lot better. So what the system does, it will load it. It will automatically work out the highest scaling factor it can use for the colour graph, so that you can actually get a graph that's easier to read. But it will tell you what that multiplier is up the top, and currently it is 14, which is quite a high multiplier. Now, if you wanted to manually change that, you can. So if I made that 13, for example, by just typing in that box and pressing tab, and that will actually change. Actually, a multiplier of 13 you can't actually see very well. So if I'll just make that a 10, and you'll see that the colour graph will actually change. As you can see, yeah, it just did then. So it's got down to a less magnified number. Or of course, if I go back to 1, it goes back to being quite red. Okay, so anyway, going back to 14 point something it was, then what we'll actually do is I'll go and bring up another one, which is the later version of this site, so you can see a comparison. Now, this is set to 14 at the moment. Now, watch what happens. It's gone and changed that to 9.8. Now, why has it done that? Okay, now it's finished adjusting it. What it's done is it's worked out that because the next version of the page, version 3, obviously was performing better, so therefore people were actually reading more of the page, it does not need as high a multiplying factor to actually give you an easy to use graph. So therefore it has actually multiplied both graphs by the same multiplier, which is 9.8, so that we are comparing apples with apples. So when we look at these two pages, we can tell that this section here, next to the KMS a week, green on the left hand side, just above the world's best kept weight loss, that was obviously read more than this green section that you can see on the right hand side, because we're comparing like with like. So it is. What I've done here is I have set things up so that you can actually, for a suboptimal page, you can still see exactly what's going on. However, it's as clear as possible. Now, the next thing I wanted to show you, which you would have seen in the demo video earlier, is these little bar graphs. And if I put my mouse over any of them, it actually gets the information about what's happening at that point. Over here we can see one person left, and there were 5 people being tracked on this page. If I look at this on the right hand side, where we've got a white bar graph and a black one, we've got one person here left and one person converted out of a total of 16, because one person at this point obviously clicked the click here button and converted. Okay, there was something I realise I have actually forgotten, which I do need to show you, which I'll do now. First thing is, you may see up there is a loading data message. Now, the loading data message actually comes up, among other things, to tell you what's going on, because it may, if you've got a lot of data, take a long time to actually load the graph that you see down the left hand side, particularly if you've got a few hundred people that you've actually tracked on a page, which is way more than I would actually recommend. I would recommend a maximum of about 100 at the absolute most. But to give you an idea, to generate the actual graph, the very first time you look at it, for a particular version of a web page, can take about, say, 30 seconds for 300-400 people. It's way too many people, but it may take a little while, so that's to tell you what's going on. Also, when you look at it next time, the same graph information, it essentially loads it out of a cache. So therefore, it takes about, for a really huge amount of data, like the 400 people, it only takes about 7 seconds.